Welcome back to the Pittsburgh Sports Cast, where two college students discuss all things Pittsburgh sports all year round. This is episode 7. My name is Ryan,
And I'm Chris.
and today, Chris, why don't we introduce? We have, for the first time ever in the Pittsburgh Sports Cast, a special guest. So, Chris, why don't you introduce him?
Yeah, so we have a special guest, a friend of ours from college. His name is Andrew. He is an avid baseball fan, I believe a New York Yankees fan. This is going to be primarily a baseball podcast, so we thought it'd be a good idea to bring his opinion on since we've had a couple episodes already ranting about baseball, so we thought it'd be a good idea to get a third voice in and give his opinions. So, Andrew, why don't you say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so go to college with Chris and Ryan. Obviously, I am a New York Yankees fan, so I will root for the Pirates though if I go to a game. It's nice that it stinks that they're not in the same um division or league because then I'd be able to go to more Yankees Pirates games, but it's only like every 4 years. But I will root for the Pirates. But yes, I'm a Yankees fan. I'm from up north of Pittsburgh. So let's get rolling.
Yep. So today we're going to start out by talking a little bit about the MLB draft, of course. It was significantly shortened. Only 5 rounds this year, which has seen a lot of complaints about that, especially the $20,000 signing uh, contract for those who declared work but went undrafted. Lots of controversy there. But the Pirates had 6 picks in the 2020 MLB draft. They got started out number 7 overall, and they managed to pick up the leader, the batting leader in the NCAA from New Mexico State, shortstop Nick Gonzalez. Um, Chris, Andrew, I think I really like this pick. At first, I was kind of hesitant because I really wanted them to take a pitcher as their first pick, but this was actually the only position player the Pirates took, and he was probably the best player available. And I know we have a few decent middle infield prospects, but I think this prospect might have the potential to kind of transcend those guys. So I think that's really nice. It's also nice to have a bat at shortstop, a typical defensive minded position. So your thoughts?
Well, here are some initial thoughts on doing some beginning research. He hasn't played a lot of shortstop actually. He's more of a second baseman. He has some experience at short, but the majority of his time came at second base. There was a guy, I forget his name, and forgive me for that, but he said Gonzalez is as close to being an MLB ready prospect as you can get. In the NCAA, he played with an aluminum bat, which is kind of it gives you an advantage, right? He went down in the Coastal League, I think, for a season or two, and tore it up with a wood bat. The writer said his idea of the strike zone is impeccable. He said there's some MLB veterans who don't have the knowledge of the strike zone that this kid has. So I think that's a positive. The only issue I have is that, and it's an MLB issue primarily, not necessarily a Pirate issue, is it takes so long to develop your prospects, right? If you take a first round draft pick, let's take the Steelers' first round draft pick this year. We didn't have one. The second round draft pick in Chase Claypool. He's gonna get first team snaps this year. He's gonna get some red zone time. He's gonna get some playing time with Ben and the starters. And primarily, it works that way in the NHL and NBA as well. But with the MLB, it just seems like you draft a player in a year and then you don't see him for another 4 or 5 years. And when you're the Pirates, who are primarily awful, right, and are rebuilding once again, it just seems like it's hard to get excited over draft picks that you won't see for another 4 or 5 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because like, um, this is a great example that I use a lot when talking about Aaron Judge, because I'm a Yankees fan. He had breakout season and he's only played few years now, and he's 28 already. So he's already been with the organization for 3-4 years, going up through the minor league system before he even got major league time, and he's one of the best players currently in the MLB. So yeah, it's definitely MLB minor league is definitely much more different than I would say all the other big sports leagues. Like NFL doesn't really even have a minor league; they just have smaller leagues that aren't really affiliated with the NFL. And then NBA has like the G League and stuff, but that's not even it's not as extensive. There's not as many teams. It's not as big. Not as many players. So I definitely agree. It'll be interesting to see how they use him.
Definitely.
Yeah. Go
I
ahead.
know it is often frustrating that draft picks take a while to develop in the minor leagues. Obviously, the one I can point out to that didn't take too long was Garrett Cole, who was drafted 1 overall in 2011, and then basically 2 years after he got drafted, made his debut in June of 2013. But that's more of an exception to the
Right.
norm. I mean, you don't come across a Garrett Cole every draft. So,
But
Yeah.
here's
um,
my, but here's my question. Like, I understand if you're coming straight from high school, right, and you're like some 18-year-old kid, I understand spending years in the minors, right, because it's your first time with professional baseball, and you're gonna need that time to develop. But when you're like, because this kid was a senior, so
exactly.
granted, his season got canceled this year, but he's played about 3 years of NCAA baseball, and then he's played, I think, a year or two, or at least a season in the Coastal League,
Yeah,
right?
Cape
So
Cod.
why does he need to get thrown down in like the Grapefruit League? Why don't at least put him in double or triple A just to see, because he's had that high level talent experience, unlike the 18-year-old coming from out of high school. You know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
I
Yeah,
mean, yeah. Go ahead, Andrew.
I think yeah, it's hard because college baseball is or baseball in general is I think between college baseball and MLB, there's like the talent level is different, but the game isn't as much different as like say like college football is very different from the NFL. Like you can
Hmm.
be a Heisman Trophy winner. You can win the Heisman in college, and then you can absolutely be horrible in the NFL. But I think it usually if you're really good in college, you'll usually do pretty well, whether it be double A, triple A, maybe even the minors, once you get into MLB. So yeah, I don't know. Since he's already a senior, and it would make sense to at least get him into double A like right away.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that was my thing because I don't even think was Garrett Cole a senior when he was drafted.
No,
Uh,
I think he was a junior.
yeah, so I think they should definitely, especially because he's been crushing it with wood bats because typically even players that pass through college will spend time in uh single A or so just to get accustomed to hitting wood bats every day. Obviously with the bat changes and the BB core standard and a myriad of other rules they have applied to aluminum and or composite bats. It's a not as drastic of a change, but it's still a change.
Yes,
Yes.
it's definitely coming from personal experience. Um, going from like I played Legion baseball in high school, so I'd have my high school season. Right, it would go from March to end of May, early June, and then I'd play travel, which was metal bats. But in between travel, I'd play Legion, which they use wood bats for American Legion baseball, and it's definitely a difference. I would say I wasn't never a power hitter, so I can't really attest to hitting home runs versus fly balls. But even those, like, if you hit a metal bat, you might hit a hard ground ball that will get through the infield. But if you're using a wood bat, it's going to go to like the second baseman for an easy play. So it's definitely a change, not a complete. It doesn't change your swing as much, but it definitely changes the difference between what certain hits will be a hit versus a out. So.
Definitely. So yeah, uh, I think I really like this pick. Obviously, new general manager really need to make some good picks to get off on the right foot, especially considering the lack of moves he made in the offseason, one way or the other. So I think this is a much needed boost for the morale of the management here that they got Nick Gonzalez, who I seldom saw any complaints about this man, which is very rare among the Pirates fan base. So that's always good. And I mentioned earlier that I was initially kind of so on the pick because if he wasn't a pitcher, but then with our last 5 picks, we took all pitchers. First in the first pick of the supplemental round, first round, we took Carmen Mlodzinski from South Carolina. He was ranked as the number 27 best available in the draft. And he got picked at 31, so a bit of a steal there. Then we took, with number 44 in the second round, Jared Jones from La Miranda in California. He's a high schooler, and there are reports that he's committed to Texas, so there is quite a chance that he will not sign. So that was kind of a questionable pick. But with the number 79 pick, we have Nick Garcia, and with 108, Jack Hartman in the fourth round, and we closed it off in the fifth round, pick number 138, Logan Hoffman. All pitchers. Nick Garcia from Chapman. Not sure if that's a high school or a college. I think might be a D3 or something. But the last 2 picks were from college. Jack Hartman from App State, Logan Hoffman from Northwestern State. So that's the Pirates draft. Definitely like they took pitchers. What about you guys?
Well, I have another question. Obviously, we needed pitching because pitching for the Pirates does not exist at the moment. As we've talked about extensively in this podcast, the lack of pitching talent anywhere in this organization is mind-boggling, to be honest. But okay, so take our second first-round pick. The dude's committed to play for Texas. Now, you're a team that's rebuilding. Why do you risk wasting a draft pick on a kid who may turn you down to play college baseball? Like, don't they interview people? And to be like, hey, you're going to college. I probably shouldn't draft you in my first round because there's a potential you go to Texas because that is where you're declared. Like, do people not think about this?
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
It definitely seems weird that they would do that because, one, you're wasting the pick. You have to go through everything to get him drafted, and then it's just all for nothing. It seems very counterintuitive to do something like that.
Yeah, just to clarify, this was our second round pick that's going to Texas, Jared Jones. But this kind of
Point still stands.
What?
I said the point still stands, though.
Yeah. But it kind of reminds me of our 2012 first round pick. Now we had at 8 overall. We picked Mark Appel, and he was our first round pick, and yet he did not sign. So it kind of reminds me of that. We basically wasted our 2012 first round pick on a guy that didn't sign. Obviously, we got a comp pick, but nothing will compare to number 8 overall. Luckily, we picked a college senior with our first round pick this year, so he's definitely going to be with us. But yeah, I think that's the only pick that I'm kind of questionable on. Also, that we didn't pick a catcher because that's another position that we have been lacking, both at the top and in the farm system. But all else being said, I could say that I'm satisfied with this draft, honestly. Probably a B plus if I had to give it a grade.
Yeah, I really do like our first round draft pick. I think he has probably the best potential. Obviously, he's the first round draft pick out of everyone. But the pitchers, you know, we'll see. We've had issues developing pitchers in recent years. Now, granted, that was under the old regime. So we do have a new regime, so maybe they can develop players better. But we did need pitchers because, like I said before, we don't have any anywhere at this point in time. So it'd be good to hopefully get some pitchers into the organization, into the system, see if we can develop them. But yeah, I think a B plus. Like I'm kind of with you. I would have liked to see us get a catcher because apparently we can only sign catchers for $2.5 million who bat under 200. Um, I don't know why, but that's
Yeah,
apparently
no,
all we can
especially.
sign.
Yeah,
Um, Go
yeah,
ahead.
really thought we could. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's really my only issue with it. Again, a lot of this is going to come down to development. It seems like again, baseball players for whatever reason can't tell you the reason, can't pinpoint the reason, but it seems like they need more development than other athletes. Like I said, I don't know what the reason is, but it just seems like they tend to need more development. So, like I said, now we got these draft picks in. Now it's really just about this new regime really developing the players, and there's something like halfway decent.
I think with the saying like the thing about baseball players needing more development, I think baseball is so much more of a skill sport than a talent sport. You definitely need to have talent and um people like Bryce Harper that can just crush home runs if you throw it down the middle. Like that's just straight talent, but there's a lot more like if you are fast and strong, you can probably be a pretty good running back even if you might not have the talent per se. Or you might have a ton of talent, you might not have the skills per se to be someone like a Le'Veon Bell who has um, more skills to cut holes and stuff. You can just be really strong and fast, and you can still be a good running back in, say, the NFL. Um, so I think that would be one of you. That's why I think also you see a lot more NFL and NBA players. It'll be they're in 1 year in college and then they're in pro sports right off the bat. And now you're seeing they're going right to pro sports overseas or right into the G League. Whereas in baseball, you definitely see more players going all 4 years to college rather than only being 1 year in college before they go to pro sports.
Yeah, and I think another reason why it could take so many years of development is because if you look at baseball, I think there's a lot more of a psychological and mental aspect to baseball as compared to other sports. So that I think could be another reason why it takes more time to develop an athlete, especially if you're coming out of high school into a major league player, because if you look at other sports, like say football or basketball, when you say someone has basketball or football IQ in that sport, it's generally, because their knowledge is unique as compared to other players. But in baseball, I think you really have to have baseball IQ if you even want to get to the major leagues. You can't just get by on talent alone. Unlike say football or basketball, you can't just be good enough. You also have to have the right the right mental standpoint, and you have to be able to know your situations, obviously, and be able to see certain pitches,
I
obviously. So,
slightly disagree. I think when you're talking, we're just going to use a football analogy, right? I think it depends on the position. Like if you're playing quarterback,
oh yeah,
like you need a high IQ. I mean football IQ. If you're
definitely.
playing like the linebackers or the back end, I think you need one as well. Because let's be real, if you're a lineman, in reality, you just stand up and knock down the guy in front of you. Okay. But if you're like a safety, think about if you're a safety. You're out there, you're the linebacker corner hybrid. There are times when you got to recognize it's a run play and you got to slam and sprint in order to stop the running back. There are times you got to be hella back because you got Megatron up in here. If you're not familiar with football, future Hall of Fame wide receiver who played for Detroit, Calvin Johnson. That if he's back there, then you got to be double teaming him all day. Even triple teams didn't work in his prime, right? And depending on zone, man to man, if you're an inside linebacker, you got to get the calls out to everyone. So I think with football, it really depends on the position. Because some positions, you just got to be smart in order to figure out how to play it.
Oh yeah, I'm not disputing that, but I'm saying that with baseball, there's every single position, I should say, specifically with hitting, I think, and being able to, see and read different pitches and know when to swing, when to not swing in the count. And when you were talking about quarterbacks, I think that quarterbacks at safeties, I think you could best equate that to like pitchers and catchers in terms of like what you said. But I think overall, I think baseball is uh, probably one of the more psychological sports. But yeah, I'm not disputing that you need IQ to play other sports, but I just think baseball is kind of a bit more above. But yeah.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I think I think that's one of the aspects that of professional sports that people don't realize is how um much you have it's the game is in your head, how much you have to be thinking every play, and if you take off a play, um it could cost you the game basically. Say you have a runner on third base, and as a shortstop, you have to field the ball and make the play. If you make one little mental mistake on not paying attention to fielding the ball, or you make the bad throw, that could be the cost of the game. I don't think people realize how um, smart, I guess, professional athletes are compared to, say, a high school athlete. It's just the talent and the mental um, ability of players is just so much greater once you reach pro sports. I think that's one of the reasons. Not, I mean, obviously physically they're so much bigger and stronger, but also mentally they're so much more adapt. I think would be a good word to be able to make those split second decisions um, in the middle of a game. So, like
And
just
especially, go ahead.
oh sorry, just listening to like JJ Watt talk about like getting to the QB, like the amount of like how much his mind is thinking, like he's just not running straight at the QB and trying to tackle him. Like he is thinking of, okay, which way can I go? Which hole can I hit this time? Which way can I use my arms? Which way can I use my legs to get around this guy? Should I back up this time? Should I really go full force? So I think it's just the like listening to him talk, like it's just you can learn so much from pro athletes on how they think and everything.
Yeah, and I think another thing that separates that I think is adjustments within the game. I think is so much more prevalent in the professional game. I remember a story. I think it was from last season where the Steelers were playing the Browns, and the Browns were had a good first half running the football or doing whatever they were doing, And Mike Tomlin legitimately walked in the locker room, got a whiteboard out, got a marker, pulled his defense in, and started drawing up and said, "Boys, this is how we fix it." Put the marker down and said, "Go do it now."
Yeah, I do think especially the advent of game film and modern technology has also accelerated the development of intelligence in professional sports because it's almost so deep and the depth and breadth of new information available. I mean, there's a whole category. I mean, obviously, baseball has sabermetrics, and it could take you a lifetime to go through every stat they have now. Plus, with the StatCast era, now you have even more metrics, you know? Who'd have thunk 20 years ago we'd be talking about launch angles, exit velocities, route efficiency, spin rate, all these things, and it just keeps exponentially growing the depth and breadth of knowledge both available and expressed by players and all kinds of professional sports. It really is incredible.
It is. It is. Now we're gonna close that discussion on the MLB draft and development of players into more of a wide look at the MLB, as there is a new proposal, along with some unique comments, we'll say, made by the commissioner, Mr. Manfred. So I think we'll get into those type of discussions now. I have John Heyman's Twitter, I believe. He is an insider at MLB Network. Um, Read you a couple tweets that he's had within the last hour. So we start with this one. MLB counter proposal to players is expected today. Sides likely to have about 5 days or so to do a deal before MLB would implement the shorter season, which we'll get into with Manfred's comments later. Then, from about an hour ago, 58 minutes ago to be exact, MLB expected to make a 72-game proposal today to players for more than 80% of prorated pay if there's a postseason. MLB also expected to significantly raise the percent from 50% in the event the postseason has been canceled. MLB has removed the tiered pay system it originally proposed and raised the percentage of pay, especially in the event a postseason has to be canceled. But the changes have been incremental. There's no confidence players will accept and no evidence they'll move off full prorated pay. And then this tweet is from Carl Ravitch, who is the ESPN Baseball and Tonight MLB, I guess, host. He says, sources tell me MLB counter proposal today will move towards a season of roughly 70-plus games with a salary percentage on the 80 to 85% prorated scale. Player pool bonus will be included. His concern, or my concern, are the recent spikes in COVID-19. Worst case would be to start the season and then stop. What would happen then? So those are two insiders' tweets on what the proposal looks like, some of their fear and thoughts. Open up to you guys for discussion.
Well, for me, I think this is really on the owners who are basically trying to propose the same offer to the players and expecting it's the classic definition of insanity, doing the same thing expecting a different result. In this case, it's the same thing veiled as something different. So really all that they're doing is changing the amount of games based on the amount of time they have available. Obviously, the number of games will shrink as time passes. Uh, but basically, in terms of total pay, as a percentage of what they would normally get on a full season, the owners are proposing that the players get 25 or 35, around 35% of that. Um, whether that is, 70 some games with 80% or 80 games with 75% or any sort of combination of pay, it all adds up to 35%, even down to the the option that they want to propose but haven't officially yet, the 50 game 100% prorated. That would be about 30 to 35%. So it's really the same deal, but they just change up a couple of the numbers. But in the end of the day, it's the same result. So I don't have optimism for the players to accept this. The owners don't want 100% prorated, even though they agreed to it in March. Um, Frankly, I think this is going to come down to Commissioner Manfred and whether he has the guts to do what we're going to talk about later. Andrew, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard because I understand both sides where the owners obviously don't want to lose all this money. They're saying they're going to lose however millions of dollars every game that they play without fans, which I think some of their numbers were a little exaggerated. At the same time, I see where the players are coming from. You don't want to play for say you go in this might be a bad example. Say you go into a job and you get paid $20 an hour, and then something happens with the work and they say you're going to have to come in and you're going to do the exact same thing, you only get paid $10 an hour though. Any person would be like, what? No, that's not fair. I'm not going to do the same work. But I think it's hard because from a fan looking in, you're like, okay, these players are making millions of dollars to play a game. They shouldn't be complaining about taking cuts. But I think that's also a very selfish way to look at things, and that these players still have it's still their way that they're making money, and to basically say you're not going to get this money that you've already been guaranteed or you've been told that you're going to get, and then all of a sudden it's going to be cut, even though you have to go out and perform. You're expected to perform the same way. It's definitely an interesting I guess argument that they're having right now. I definitely see both sides. I'm not sure what the best solution is, but yeah.
Okay, so let's play this game then. Well, I'm gonna ask you two questions first. So Andrew, Ryan and I on a previous episode have kind of discussed, who we have to blame for the lockout, not lockout, but lack of season. So my first question to you is, who do you put the blame on? Is it more owners or more players? And then for both of you, and then I'll answer at the end. If you're the commissioner slash MLBPA, you can pick which one. Do you think would be an acceptable compromise, right? Because it looks like they're on two ends of the spectrum, on the other opposite ends, obviously. But let's say someone came to you and said, Andrew and Ryan, what you say goes. What would be a good compromise in your two's opinion?
So I guess for me, I think the owners definitely have a partial blame in that they're cutting. I think they're definitely cutting, like, if they're gonna have a shortened season, I do think that they should be paid the maximum amount, because those players are if you're doing the prorated and you're already getting paid for only the games you play, they're already missing out on however many games, if it's 50, 60 to 70 games that you're not getting any pay from. To then take that percentage of games and then cut it down even more, I think that's definitely. But I think one thing is for the players to. I think I'm putting more blame on the players, is that they're asking for more games. I think that's one of the problems I'm seeing, is that a lot of places, even colleges now, some colleges are starting school early to try to miss the second wave that's supposed to be coming of the coronavirus in late or early winter, around November, December, maybe even October. So I think that the best compromise, I think, would be you keep the shortened, I would say shortened season. Then you don't have to deal with if you get you're like 70 games into the season and then they're like and it starts spiking and you're gonna have to cancel, but you still have whatever. If what was the first, was it 114 games was the first
That was
proposal?
the players
Yeah, that was
proposed
the
that.
player's
Or
proposal
yeah,
too.
yeah, so like you have the 114, you're only on like 70 games and then you have to cancel the season again, and then all that work you've put in is all
For
so
not.
I think the best solution was be they get paid full amount for a shortened amount of games. I think that would be if I were to choose, I would say okay, because what's the smallest amount the MLB has proposed? 89.
Yeah, well, it would be the proposal that's going through today with like 82
I think it's even 70 something the MLB proposed.
or whatever John Hyman said.
Yeah, but yeah, I think for me at least, yeah, I think both sides, obviously both sides, but I do kind of think that the owners are underestimating how many fans are willing to leave the game for good because of if the season gets canceled. I think that the owners are underestimating the long-term financial hit that they will take if they have no baseball this year. Yes, I do think there should be less games played. I do think the owners are right with that. I think it's ridiculous that the players are proposing over 100 games. There's no way that should happen. But I do think the owners should offer full prorated pay. It's only fair to the players. It's only fair to the players who are doing the same thing. And I think it would benefit them long term because yes, you're going to take a hit, but you know what? This is business. There are risks involved when you invest in a business, and this is one case where you know you pay the price for that risk of investing in a sports franchise, especially because, and I think another reason, especially where you have to, figure out a way to play. Other leagues are coming back, and you know, they're like we talked about, Chris, in a previous episode. MLB is losing its monopoly that it usually has over the summer months because hockey and basketball now are going to be having their playoffs. Even next season, they're shaping up for next season to start around December. So next season's gonna run into July and August, and by that time the NFL's back up again. So I think it really is crucial, especially for the owners, because the players have said that they are unwilling to budge on anything less than 100% pro-rated pay. No matter how many games you offer, they're not willing to have 100% or to have less than 100% pro-rated pay. So I think Andrew's compromise, which is what I was thinking of before you said it, where you get around 70 games, 100% prorated, sounds good to me. Let's get this show on the road and let's play ball.
See, but if you're a player, right? Because here's my issue with that. If you're a player, especially, let's say a starting pitcher, you realistically only pitch, what, once every 5 days, right? Right. Okay. So if you have a shortened season, let's just take this newest proposal of 72 games, okay? So you're only going to get, what, 13 starts? I mean, if you're a starting pitcher, looking for a payday, let's say like your contract's up and you're looking to get paid here. 13 games, like that's not a lot to prove yourself. Especially, when in a regular season, what you're gonna get twice that, you're gonna get, almost 30 starts. If not more, depending if your team makes a postseason, and to only have 13, I think from like a player's perspective, I understand, the second wave concerns, and they still have to play an entire season while, the other two leagues right now just have to play postseason or games to get into the postseason and then the postseason. But from a player's perspective, you're gonna lose out on a lot of games. And like I said, if it's a contract year or whatnot, that's a hard bargain to accept. And not to mention as well that with the extra, see, this is a catch-22 because I can see why the players want more games, right? But then you have the second coronavirus concerns, right? And then like no one, and then Ryan, you and I kind of discussed this on a previous episode that a lot of these leagues make their TV revenue on playoffs, right? And then if you have to cancel the playoffs for an unforeseen reason, like that's going to be disastrous. I mean, and then I think we're about to get into Manfred's comments. I mean, this is such a complicated situation, right? Because the players aren't happy, the owners aren't happy, the commissioner's about to executive order this entire thing. There's threat that even if you do play a season, you might not get it in, which would just be wasting a ton of money on all fronts. So, for a compromise, I don't know. I think I would try at least for 81. I don't know if you could do it. I think you could at least try. But then I would agree with you guys that you run the risk of not finishing the season, which would be disastrous. But again, not having a season is disastrous. So maybe you play a season with lesser games and try to do it that way. But I just think that's going to leave a lot of people unhappy, especially coming from the players.
Yeah, I definitely think they need to do something to get baseball back. It's definitely especially being the sport right now that is the least contact of the if you want to say even soccer, hockey, basketball, football, other than baseball, it's the one with the least amount of contact. Lots of states right now are allowing baseball and softball travel seasons to come back under like certain guidelines. I know my sister actually played in a softball tournament last week. That they had to have certain guidelines because it's outside. You're not coming in contact with much of the other team, really just your own team. I think what they did is they had to have they have to have social distancing in their dugouts. They could only have certain people in the dugouts, like the current batters. Everyone else had to be outside on the bleachers. They had to change out the baseballs, so like you use the softballs, the opposing pitcher would, and the fielding team would use their softballs, and then once they get 3 outs, they take all the softballs off the field and then bring in a brand new batch from the other teams and then play with those. So baseball is definitely the one where it would be the easiest to, well, not the easiest, obviously, but it'd make the most sense to be able to bring it back, because basketball, everyone's touching the same ball. You're playing defense. Football, everyone's touching the same ball. You're tackling people. So to have baseball be the sport, it's definitely discouraging to see. This would be the one, especially when it's summertime. This is the sport that you would think have been the first one to come back, especially when they didn't even start their season. So, yeah, it's definitely hard. It'll be interesting to see what the virus does. If there will be a second spike, if it will be a spike, but there won't be as many, they'll have better treatment options. So it won't be as Because I know just in the amount of time from like March, what was it, like 13th or middle of March when when school got canceled to now, the amount of treatment has grown exponentially to help people.
Indeed. Plus, there's other factors like some say it's mutating to be less deadly, or there's all kinds of these things. Like, I think, you know, I definitely think there could be a possibility for a second wave, but who knows how bad that's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it's not as bad, but if so, that would just be bad luck, in spite of advancements that we have made.
I definitely think that they need to. I think they need to be cautious about the second wave, but I don't think they need to. They shouldn't be putting all of their trust on there not being one or there being one. I guess.
Oh, definitely agreed. Yeah,
You
no,
definitely
obviously.
you definitely
Obviously,
need.
folks at home, we're not medical professionals, so
Yes.
don't. I always like to offer that disclaimer. We're not doctors, we're not experts. This is just a couple sports fans talking about sports stuff. But yep, that's so. Yep. Uh, I don't know if there's anything more to say on the proposals except for um we've alluded to this earlier in the podcast several times, but I think it's time that we have a conversation about it. Um, Andrew, you got some options, or Chris, you got some sources popped up. Why don't we start our third and final segment of the Pittsburgh Sportscast today?
So a few days ago, I think was it 2 days ago that Manfred? Yes.
Yeah, I think it was 2 days
Yes,
ago.
it was right before the draft.
2 days ago, Manfred basically went on air and said, or on record and said, he's 100% sure, that's pretty sure, that there will be a baseball season in 2020. So he has the ability to basically go in and because the commissioner is the in-between person between the the Players Association and the league, so he could be able to come in and say, okay, I am overriding both of your proposals. This is what's going to happen. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's some way that the Players Association or the ML, like the owners, could come in and say they don't want to do this and they can veto it basically, because a lot of sports will have kind of the same way the government is run. Is you might be able to put an executive order, but there's checks and balances so one person can't just make all the decisions basically. But I think he called it the nuclear option at one point, which would be a shortened season. One source even said only 50 games, regular season games, and then a certain I don't know. I don't think he ever mentioned playoffs, but
I think
he
somewhere
said
around
that
14 or 16 teams.
yeah.
We don't. It's
So
not finalized yet because no one expected this.
yeah, so he said he's close to he hasn't even made like a full one, but it's still in development on what he would exactly do. But one of his quotes was, "If we don't get an agreement real soon, this is going to be ugly, real ugly, and it's just going to get worse." And I think of all the things with this, I think he's spot on with that statement. Is that I think if there is no season, um, well, one, the owners are gonna lose money, players are gonna lose money, people lose money, no one's happy about that. And then I think it also will really hurt baseball coming back, especially seeing if it'd be one thing if, say, the NFL and the NBA and NHL don't play this year at all. They all just are like, okay, we're not going to deal with it. We're not going to try to do anything. We're just going to start 2021, 2020 seasons. They never even happened, basically.
Null and void, as they say over in England.
But to have all these sports working around it and actually starting to have some success bringing it back, it'll be interesting to see how the NBA and NHL how their comeback seasons work, and as well as college and NFL starting up in the fall if it does start. But I think it'll definitely be a huge hit to the MLB for a fan base that's I definitely think there's not as many people who are avid baseball fans as, I guess. I don't know. Definitely. I think I've been hearing more comments. I mean, I don't know everyone in America, obviously, but I've definitely been hearing more comments of baseball's boring. Oh, I don't really like watching baseball. I'd rather watch something else. Baseball's okay. Not a big fan of baseball. I don't know anything about baseball. I think that's definitely one more thing is people like a lot like people know they know who LeBron James is. They might know who like Bryce Harper is and Mike Trout, but there's not a lot of people who know MLB superstars. Like they probably know Derek Jeter, but Derek Jeter's retired. They probably like
Exactly. That's the
so
whole. That's been the whole comment. Like even in the past, like 20, 25 years, like 20 years ago, it was just like football and basketball. 20 years ago, you could recognize, there were people who recognized Ken Griffey Jr. on the street. And, people who recognize Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, uh, those guys. Nowadays, you only have two people at most that you'd be able to recognize, the average sports fan even could recognize on the street. And, you know, I'm honestly worried for the future of baseball, especially if there's no 2020 season because, people say it's the national pastime. People say it's never going to go away. But here's the thing. Sports can and do go away. The analogy I always like to make is 50 years ago, any sports fan would be ashamed or couldn't call themselves a sports fan if they didn't know who the heavyweight champion of the world was. Nowadays, nobody knows who the heavyweight champion of the world is, or at least relative to back then. So things can change, and hopefully, in baseball's case, they don't change.
I
Well,
think
I think we
I'll
have
let
some
you-
issues here,
my bad.
right? I think we have some issues, obviously. Going back to Manfred's comments. Um, Going back to Manfred's comments, I think MLB could be in an extremely dangerous situation because why? Because worst case scenario, the players slash owners strike, right? Because I think they both have the potential to strike. So worst case scenario is owners slash players strike, and there's no season. So not only is there no season, you have an active strike that's happening within the league. Which then goes issues beyond coronavirus, right? Because then you got like the owners saying stuff, then you have Manfred who's trying to get his thing, then you got the players saying stuff, you got one side striking. I mean, it could be a messy, messy, messy situation. Because let's be real, coronavirus, may screw up this season or whatnot, but they could get it back. I mean, if like players and owners go on strike, you're looking at issues that may be going on into 2021, 2022, right?
Exactly.
Which would be
Yes.
disastrous.
The CBA, remember, expires after 2021.
See, and so I didn't even know that. That's a good point. So you could realistically, worst case scenario, and we're gonna pray this doesn't happen, but you could have no 2020 season with an active strike going on, and then the CBA runs out. So try bargaining a new CBA with an active strike and a 2020 season already being canceled. Like, could you imagine the consequences to that? Like, I'm struggling to see the cost. I mean, this, like I said, there's a realistic chance, not opportunity, realistic chance that this could go into 2022, and a realistic chance that if a strike does happen, we miss 2 seasons of baseball, 2020 and 2021. Because if they can't figure out something and someone goes on strike, 2020 is canceled, and then the CBA runs out, and then 2021 is canceled.
And by that time, people have found something else to do with their time, whether it be an NBA season that runs into August, or an NHL season that runs into August, or soccer, or something else. Lacrosse is on the rise too. Geez, there's more competition. By that time, it's there. All hope will be lost, and I really don't want to think about what happens if the players decide to strike or the owners lock the players out. Gosh, I'm praying that something happens.
I will say that I think in the end, I mean, this could be years down the road. I think the MLB will be fine no matter what happens in the situation. I think there's enough fans of baseball, and there's still kids coming up through playing baseball, and I think there's still a demand for baseball either way. Um, so I think the MLB in the end, whether or not you could have 1, 2, maybe even 3 seasons, 2020, 2021, 2022, affected by the disagreements between the players and the owners. It might be a different sort of league coming out in the end. Um, but I think that the demand is down. But I also think there is a demand going down for all sports. There's like I know, and especially like schools around us, there's a lot of kids that don't play sports. Whereas, 10 years ago, you played a sport in the fall, the winter, and the spring. So I think I guess there is still travel baseball is really big in America. I think that's growing. Um, I think baseball is still growing around the world more. Um, you
Oh,
still
definitely.
have lots of the Latin America, South America baseball is very big. Um, Japan, Korea baseball leagues are still very big. So I think that the demand for baseball is still there. I don't think the demand for baseball. It just will be interesting if there will be a demand for the MLB.
That's true. We could see like we could see an XLB maybe rise from the the fans outrage towards Major League Baseball. I mean, we saw unfortunately before it was cut short by COVID, we saw how successful the XFL was. So maybe we could see something like that with baseball. Uh, who knows what the future will hold, but obviously we we do not want to see the season canceled. That would be a travesty. Manfred says that won't happen. Although I will say, if it is Manfred that launches the nuclear option, and it is something that the players and owners will both go with, I do think that should help his standing because uh, you'd be rare to find someone that has anything positive to say on the commissioner of baseball right now. Um, so I guess good for him if he manages to step in and get it done. but I think this nuclear option could cause more trouble than it alleviates, honestly.
I think one more thing to say with the losing the fan base. I guess I have an extreme bias, so I'd be the wrong person to have an opinion on the situation. But towards baseball, but I think like if they had a MLB game right now, like I would be watching it on TV. Like I just want to watch baseball on TV, American baseball. I want to see the Yankees just play a baseball game. I don't care if it was in a random field, not even in a stadium. They could have someone filming it with a iPhone. I would watch that game on TV right now. So I think that the larger like hardcore fans that watch, I would say at least 80% of the baseball games on TV or go to the stadium, I think those people are still craving baseball. And if there was baseball on TV today, they would be watching it. So I think it would be more the fans who are kind of on the fence. They might watch baseball sometimes. They might go to a few games a year, or every few years. I think those are the fans that would be the ones that would be lost if this were to happen, missing multiple seasons because of disagreement. But
Yep, it is obviously another frustrating rant about baseball. Uh, you guys have any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Just some other side notes from other Pittsburgh sports. Nothing new on the Steelers front. Oh, there's one thing. Training camp will not be held in St. Vincent for the first time in 50 years. Um, training camp will be held at their usual regular season Southside practice facility.
They're gonna have it at
Um,
Heinz Field, actually.
oh, yep. So some news there knows that there will be no open practices for obvious reasons. If you're a veteran fan of the Steelers, you know that they like to have open training camps where you can come meet the players and all that. That will not happen this year. Um, some Penguins news. The majority of the players have returned to the ice at the UPMC Sports Complex facility in Cranberry. Training camp has an official date of July 10th. So it's looking we're getting closer to hockey. Day by day here, we got a training camp date set. We got players such as Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Jay Gensel, Chris Letang, Matt Murray have all returned to skating at the Penguins facility. So hockey is well on its way to getting back. Like I said, training camp has been moved for the Steelers. That's it on the football front. And we discussed all things baseball. So that's it.
I will say one final comment on baseball is bringing up NFL and um would be baseball has many more games than the other sports. So I think like for me, I've I've never actually been to a Steelers game. I've only watched them on TV. I think because NFL has a shorter season, tickets are much more expensive. Um, I think the NFL will be okay no matter what happens because their fan base is so much already oriented on TV. Where I think the MLB is definitely a sport that draws a lot more money from the fans coming in. I think the NFL will be okay if they don't have fans in the stands and it won't affect them as much as it would the MLB.
Agreed.
Yes. So with that, special thanks to Andrew for joining us here. Always glad to have special guests here on the Pittsburgh Sportscast. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Yep, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right, and remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't yet. Leave a comment below if you are watching this on YouTube, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Anchor, Google, and a myriad of other options, which I have not bothered to mention. If you have questions, you can also email us, pittsburghsportspodcast@gmail.com. You can email us your questions and comments. We might be able to answer them on the air for you. But until next time, for Andrew and Chris, this is Ryan signing off. Episode 7 of the Pittsburgh Sports Cast. We'll see you next time.